door neighbor's yard. Yes, it's a real locomotive in Al Folio's backyard. But this isn't your average train. It's a 1918 coal-fired train engine built for the U.S. Army during World War I. We'll see you at 11. Thanks for joining us. Good night.
Israel and the PLO finally strike a deal to withdraw Israeli soldiers from towns in the West Bank. The furor over the scientific search for a link between genetics and crime, and trying to find the cause of one town's medical nightmare.
From ABC, this is World News Sunday. Here's Carol Simpson.
Good evening. There was a major step forward today for peace in the Middle East. A new deal that's being hailed in Washington and other world capitals. A deal that's being condemned by Israeli and Palestinian extremists who are already vowing to derail it. It comes more than a year behind schedule, but Israel and the PLO have finally agreed on a plan to end 28 years of Israeli occupation in major Arab cities in the West Bank. Details from ABC's Ron Allen.
Relieved after 8 days of around-the-clock bargaining, and not long after Yasser Arafat had stormed out of the room, the deal was announced.
For this, we have spent all these nights and days. Look how many papers.
400 pages, quickly initialed on the eve of the Jewish New Year.
It is a historic choice, a moral choice, an extended hand to the future, an extended hand to our neighbors.
10 days after the agreement is formally signed in Washington, the Israeli army must begin pulling back from 6 cities and hundreds of Palestinian villages in the West Bank, a 6-month-long process. West Bank and Gaza residents will then elect their own self-governing council. 12,000 new police will be added. The Israelis also agreed to gradually release more than 5,000 Palestinian prisoners, despite fears of some Israelis that a haven for terrorists is being created.
They're doing things much too fast. I think they've given much too much up. They shouldn't have given so much up, and I'm very disappointed about it.
The agreement lays out a special plan for Hebron, the scene of violent clashes throughout the week. The only Palestinian city in the West Bank with a small enclave of 400 Jewish settlers. The Israeli army will continue to protect the settlers' homes, the roads they travel, and their religious sites. However, in the Palestinian cities, the Israeli patrols won't be leaving soon enough.
Israeli soldiers mean to everybody, it means the occupation. When we see a soldier, we can see the occupation. And we are happy to see an end to the occupation.
As they learn the details of this interim agreement in Palestinian communities, one of the most important questions is whether or not it brings them any closer to an independent state, free of Israeli occupation. Still to be resolved, the final status of Jerusalem and West Bank Jewish settlements. Today's agreement is another step forward, with many more to go. Ron Allen, ABC News on the West Bank.
Most Palestinians embrace the news of today's long-awaited agreement. ABC's Bob Jamieson looks at one West Bank town that will be affected.
The conversation around the Al Obra service station in Qalqilya is about hope and peace and prosperity. What it will mean for the Palestinians to rule themselves. Khalil Ali Sasa hopes he will find more work for his construction company. He says Israel blocked economic development in Qalqilya. Nabil Katawi, who has lived most of his 32 years under the restrictions of Israeli rule, says once the soldiers leave, he will have freedom of speech. And Hassan al-Obra believes his little service station will grow because once the Israelis leave, the West Bank will be able to build its own economy. Everywhere I go, he says, people are thinking of their ambitions, and they are very optimistic about the future. The past has not been kind to Qalqilya, a city of 70,000. The busy traffic on the dusty streets obscures the fact that a third of the people here have no jobs. There are no factories, little agriculture, no hospital. Israeli soldiers are still here, yet the prospect of self-rule has already brought change. Qalqilya now has a bank. Before, there was no place for Palestinians to make deposits or cash checks or get a loan. A number of Palestinians who left here for opportunity elsewhere have returned, like the bank's manager.
Peace is the beginning of the long road. We have to do many things. We have to build a country.
But there is a reality here to temper the hope. For 3 decades, Qalqilia's economy has been dependent on Israel's. And ironically, peace may cause immediate hardship. The Israeli military intends to build a fence here after soldiers pull out, sealing the border for security reasons. That threatens the livelihood of truck driver Yusuf Husni, who hauls stone to Israel each day. Husni and thousands of other Palestinians make their living in Israel, and they may be out of jobs. You know, he says, you can't predict the future. We don't know what will happen. But most of the people believe that a future without the Israelis here, even a difficult one, has to be better than the past. Bob Jameson, ABC News, Qalqilia.
And tonight, there is a possible hitch in the Bosnian peace talks scheduled to start on Tuesday here in New York. The Bosnian ambassador to the United States issued a statement today raising the possibility his government might not show up. The Bosnians say they are upset because the Serbian government is ignoring some concerns raised by Bosnia and is trying to change the agreement worked out by U.S. envoy Richard Holbrooke. On New Zealand's North Island, a volcano is spewing rocks and ash into the air while mud and lava is spilling down the slopes of the 9,200-foot mountain. The eruption began Saturday and skiers were evacuated after the explosions began. There have been no reports of injuries or damage. Still ahead, fireworks over the scientific inquiry into genetics and violent crime. A growing army of teenagers who refuse to abuse drugs, alcohol, or anything else. And 101 ways to say, buy my book, please.
This is World News Sunday, brought to you by Cotton Incorporated.
Here, do something. So you guys are having spaghetti for dinner? Thank you.
Life moves pretty fast. Sometimes you have to tell yourself, stop. Look around. This is the good stuff. This is the fabric of our lives. This is cotton.
Introducing an Alka-Seltzer that goes where no Alka-Seltzer has gone before. New Alka-Seltzer caplets. Now you can get fast relief for acid indigestion or heartburn with headache in an easy-to-swallow caplet. Anytime, anywhere. New Alka-Seltzer caplets.
Monday, I soak my dentures. Tuesday, I brush. Wednesday, I...
Stop. DentuCream really cleans dentures, and its new Mouthwash Fresh formula has more minty mouthwash ingredients. DentuCream.
Every day.
Now with new Mouthwash Fresh formula.
On Maryland's eastern shore, scientists who are studying whether there may be a link between genetics and violent crime have finally met on that highly controversial subject. The conference had been postponed for 3 years because of its potentially explosive discussions. As ABC's Deborah Amos explains, it was no less controversial this weekend.
Scientists and criminologists at the conference said again today that the hunt for a link between genes and crime is a dangerous journey.
It can begin with the best of intentions and be used with the worst of results.
We are beginning to identify some markers of antisocial behavior using biological tests. I stress the word markers.
But their caution didn't satisfy these protesters who stormed the conference yesterday, seeing only the sinister in this science.
Maryland Conference, you get high! We know you're pushing genocide!
We're here to tell you a few things about your racist theories.
Hear it! We don't want to hear it!
Some scientists here argue that society should be able to treat criminals, not just punish them. But protesters and others fear that this science can be misused. There are examples in history, genetic screening used by the German government in the Second World War, and more immediate concerns, theories used to write off segments of the U.S. population or as an excuse for criminals, victims of their genetic makeup.
It is not pure science, and the people who do claim it's pure science simply are trying, I think, to create a smokescreen.
Even for the scientists, the picture is not yet clear. And scientists disagree on what factors are more important to determine who will commit crimes, the traits people are born with or their environment.
There are genes here on this hand for criminal behavior, and here's criminal behavior. What's in the middle?
Even if biologists could name a cause for violent crime, some ask whether each person with that trait would act in the same way.
How is it that we could know in advance that that reaction would not be channeled into a legally acceptable violent activity?
For example, football. There is no answer yet, but with a tremendous push to identify the genes for everything from breast cancer to obesity, there's great hope, as well as great fear, of the rush for a genetic link to the complex problem of violent crime. Deborah Amos, ABC News, Queenstown, Maryland.
This week, the U.S. Supreme Court justices meet privately to decide which cases to hear when their new term begins on the traditional first Monday in October. One case that will be watched closely would require all male college military academies to admit women. ABC law correspondent Tim O'Brien takes a look at the all-female alternative to the all-male Virginia Military Institute.
Good try. There's definitely nowhere to hold here.
This is the leadership program at Mary Baldwin College, created by the state of Virginia to satisfy a federal court order that it either admit women to VMI or provide them similar opportunities elsewhere.
This is more a summer camp than it is a boot camp. The instructors are not drill instructors as much as they are tour guides who put together wilderness vacations for a living.
However challenging, the program bears little resemblance to the rigors of VMI and the in-your-face confrontations between upperclassmen and freshman cadets. The Clinton administration is asking the Supreme Court to rule that creating separate facilities for women amounts to unlawful sex discrimination, and some women's groups agree.
These military academies, we only have 2 left. They are totally discriminatory. They should be integrated, and I think that separate is never equal.
Federal civil rights laws come into play because VMI is a state-supported school, but the stakes are greater than that.
The stakes are whether or not we will be permitted in this country, in the United States, to have single-gender education for the people who choose to want it.
Because even private schools accept some government money or tax breaks, they too are governed by federal civil rights laws and could be affected by what the Supreme Court does. Should the court rule that VMI may not deny admission because of an applicant's gender, then it becomes debatable whether any school can, public or private, college or high school. Tim O'Brien, ABC News, Staunton, Virginia.
Coming up, trying to unravel the mystery of one town's frightening health crisis.
At Cigna, we care about people who have babies. We care about people who have cancer. We care about companies that make steel and about companies that make bread. We care about people whose lives have been shattered and the people who help pick up the pieces. We care about life and about all that makes life great or possible or just better. At Cigna, we care because it is our business to care, and because the more we care, the better our business does. But we also care because, well, because we have babies too. Cigna, a business of caring.
It is a world of spaciousness. It is Avalon. Extraordinary comfort that creates a serene environment. Engineering that reduces noise and vibration. Establishing a higher level of elegance than any Toyota ever. Avalon, the new flagship from Toyota. Experience the tranquility.
In one small town in Texas, mystery illnesses and their possible link to a cement plant that burns hazardous waste are becoming the subject of a bitter and protracted environmental battle. Here's James Walker.
The people who live near Midlothian, Texas say something is making them sick.
I have upper respiratory problems. Both of my sons have upper respiratory problems. My youngest one has chronic sinusitis.
The lady up the road had a brain tumor. The lady across the street from her had a brain tumor. And the gentleman across the street.
And that's not all. 11 children with Down syndrome, a birth defect caused by an extra chromosome, have been born in a 20-mile radius around Midlothian. State health officials say that's 4 times higher than expected.
I desperately want to know if there is an answer that we can find out at this time.
Babies with Down syndrome, children and adults with breathing problems and brain tumors. As the number of cases seemed to grow, the victims began to search for an explanation. The link to the sudden surge in medical problems, some people believe, is this cement plant, which began burning liquid hazardous waste in 1987. Residents say that's when the mystery illnesses began to appear, and most of the victims, it turned out, lived downwind. But plant officials say there is no connection.
If people feel ill, then certainly that's a personal feeling, and we can't question that. We can say that the activities of this plant are not a cause of those illnesses.
The Midlothian plant is only one of 22 cement plants in 13 states that burn hazardous waste as fuel. The practice is a profitable one. The plants actually get paid by chemical companies and auto shops to take the waste, which contains highly toxic chemicals such as arsenic, lead, and mercury, and are allowed to burn it under less stringent environmental regulations than commercial incinerators. Hugh Kaufman, a senior engineer with the Environmental Protection Agency, says there may be a connection between the illnesses and the plant.
Heavy metals such as lead, mercury are not destroyed. They go up the stack, or they go into the product, the cement, or they go into the ash. You can't destroy lead or mercury.
In fact, in 1993, the EPA reported that seepage from a cement dust landfill at the Midlothian plant contained arsenic and lead that could find their way into local streams. The company concedes the residues contain heavy metals, but insists the levels are so low they pose no danger. And the dust produced by this plant?
Is not hazardous.
Period.
Period.
So it's no danger at any time now, 5 years, 10 years from now?
That's correct.
No danger that heavy metals could leach into the water system at all?
That's correct.
While no study to date has connected the kilns to any illness, more investigations are underway. The Texas Health Department is following up on a study which concluded that the cases of Down syndrome around Midlothian were unlikely to have arisen by chance. And this month, the EPA began investigating an unusual number of birth defects in farm animals. Ivy Howard is not waiting for more studies. 2 weeks ago, she joined a class action lawsuit against Texas Industries.
As long as I have breath in my lungs, I'm going to fight them to the bitter ends. And I'm going to prove to them one of these days that they're the cause of it.
The cause for the mystery illnesses. There's a lot of suspicion, but so far, there are no answers. James Walker, ABC News, Midlothian, Texas.
When we return, resisting the pressure.
Thanks to Sprint Business, there's a company who does more business in skis.
Sprint gave us an edge.
Sprint worked with Volant and brought them real solutions to help them get ahead so they can check orders online from anywhere and promote new products through video conferencing. Now they do business a whole new way.
And sales are really soaring.
We'll help your business do more business. Call Sprint Business.
Fibercon or Metamucil? Both give you the same predictable regularity, the same natural action of fiber. So what makes Fibercon different? With Fibercon, I get my fiber in 2 caplets. Fibercon, fiber regularity that's easier to take.
When I got rid of my gray hair, I wanted a natural look, so I didn't take any chances. I used the sure thing for a natural look called Just for Men.
Apply Just for Men, and in 5 minutes, rinse. It's specially timed to blend away gray, bring back your natural look, and condition hair.
It's a sure thing.
Just for Men, the sure thing for a natural look. And now try Just for Men Color Gel for the hard-to-color hair of mustaches and beards. Brush in, rinse out. Just 5 minutes.
more relief than the regular strength of Bayer or Tylenol. Anacin, when you really got a headache.
You know, there's nothing more fun than a vacation at sea. You can lounge in the fresh air, visit romantic ports, enjoy fine dining, great shows, pampered service. I love it here. There's so much to do.
Holy cow! Hi, Kathy.
Hi, Richard. What are you doing here?
Having the time of my life. Yay! If my friends can see me now.
Take a 3-, 4-, or 7-day vacation on Carnival, the most popular cruise line in the world.
I love this ship.
After a decade of decline, there are disturbing new studies showing that teenage use of marijuana and other illegal drugs is on the rise. ABC's Anderson Cooper has discovered a small but growing group of young people who are refusing to engage in such self-destructive behavior. They call themselves straight edge.
Trevor O'Hare is 16 years old and sickened by the society he sees around him.
There's lots of bad things that happen in our community that is wrong. Women getting beat, people getting raped, drugs, eating meat, all that's everything that's just wrong. So everything's got to be changed.
Youthful frustration and rebellion. But unlike most young people, what Trevor and his brother Justin are rebelling against is their own generation.
There's kids that come to school drunk, kids that come to school high. All they do is talk about is doing pot. It's like, yeah, we're going out this weekend, you know, we're gonna get messed up, you know, we're gonna buy, you know, 40s, we're gonna like go get a case of beer, you know, and like it seems like their whole life revolves around like getting drunk, you know, doing drugs, and it's like it seems like such a waste of time for me.
Justin and Trevor became part of Straight Edge, a movement that's attracted thousands of young people across the country who believe the only way to better themselves is to forever abstain from alcohol, cigarettes, illegal drugs, and promiscuous sex.
The main line of Straight Edge, you know, is being drug-free. You know, it's totally a positive outlook on yourself. You know, you don't have to like, you know, you don't have to bring yourself down to the levels of like drugs and alcohol to keep yourself happy. You know?
Justin has been straight edge for 5 years. His mother sees so much positive change that she doesn't mind if it all seems a bit strange.
A lot of people have seen my kids, and, you know, their hair tends to be, you know, dyed blonde occasionally, or the short, you know, the buzz look and the earrings and stuff, but I think I'm very lucky because they are on a straight and narrow, you know, the old-fashioned straight and narrow.
Many straight edgers believe that today's problems began with their parents' generation, which came of age in the 1960s, embracing drugs and alcohol as part of their rebellion.
Parents in the 60s wanted to change the world, so they tried to do it, and they could have done it, but they had drugs and they had sleeping around.
They trapped themselves and nothing came out of it, you know? You had this 10-year revolution, supposedly, that actually ended up in nothing, and now all we have to show for it is like the HIV virus.
Straight edgers are just a tiny segment of the youth population, spreading their message at concerts where the music is loud, aggressive, and hardcore. They look like many other kids, frustrated, angry, rebelling. But for these kids, rebellion is not about changing the world. For them, it means self-discipline, a message they say sets them apart from many in their generation. Anderson Cooper, ABC News, Syracuse, New York.
Rebellious teenagers are often the ones who end up lost and alone, runaways with little chance for a better life. ABC's Michelle Norris looks at a new exhibit which has just begun a nationwide tour. It documents the nightmare facing children who have nowhere to go but the streets.
The exhibit explores what happens to teenage runaways who have no place to go. A girl known as Echo. She ran away from home after being raped by her stepfather. Echo wound up selling her body to feed a drug habit. Barely in his teens, Rusty begged to be arrested, just so he would have a roof over his head, while Marco slept wherever he could, keeping a gun by his side. And then there's the skeleton-thin Tweaky Dave, a major character in the exhibit. The needle tracks on his arm tell the story of his addiction. Last November, Tweaky Dave died from hepatitis, just a few weeks after the photographer filmed this video.
They were in another world, which is often more violent than the one they ran away from. More horrendous than anyone can ever imagine.
Photographer Jim Goldberg followed a group of teenage runaways for almost 10 years in Hollywood and San Francisco. Their stories showed that young people who flee problems at home often trade one hell for another. It is estimated that more than 1 million teenagers leave home each year, and the streets that now await them are even meaner than they used to be. Ragdoll is part of the exhibit. She says going back home is not always an option.
Either they were going to call the police on me and get me taken out of my house, or I was going to just end up leaving. So pretty much I end up leaving.
For runaways, life on the street is tough. Jim Goldberg hopes that showing just how tough will help keep some runaways from winding up there. Michelle Norris, ABC News, Washington.
And we'll be back in a moment.
Before introduction, a Moen faucet is tested at least 500,000 times against leaks and drips. So it's hard to find a more reliable faucet, no matter how you look at it. Moen. Buy it for looks. Buy it for life.
Traces of crimson on your toothbrush. Bleeding gums. It's caused by germs. Listerine kills them. It helps prevent the gum disease, gingivitis. Kill the germs. Spare your gums. Listerine, the power of prevention.
He told me he needed more space. Said he needs to feel more power and control in his life. Well, what's he want to do? He wants a Cadillac DeVille.
Now DeVille is better than ever because now it has the North Star system and its extraordinary combination of comfort, safety, security, and performance. Nothing else feels like DeVille from Cadillac.
I told him nowhere to do.
This week, how to talk to your children so that they can learn.
Also, former Secretary of State James Baker.
Plus the care and feeding of your home computer.
Good Morning America here on ABC. Finally tonight, Colin Powell is the one most in demand at the moment, but there are hundreds, maybe thousands of authors out there doing whatever they have to do to sell their new books. ABC's political and media analyst Jeff Greenfield is one of them. He's been trying frantically to get the word out about his new political novel, and he's having a tough time.
He's not good looking. Please welcome Jeff Greenfield, ladies and gentlemen. Jeff Greenfield. An author on a book tour is like a teenage boy on his first hot date. There's only one thing on his mind. Oh, it may sound like he's engaged in a casual conversation, but if you could hear a writer's innermost thoughts, you'd know the real agenda. Now, let me ask you politics. What's up? What's happening now? What's your latest take?
Actually, I was thinking about, Colin Powell.
What I was thinking is that he's got 1 million copies of his book in print and a private air force to fly him all over the country. How come nobody asks him about my book?
Let's talk a little presidential politics. But he won't make any predictions.
Oh, come on. We've got a whole year to talk about presidential politics. My book is in the stores right now. Why don't you ask me how funny it is?
Where is the broadcast news world, say, 5 years from now?
A lot of us are asking ourselves that same question.
Oh, great. A journalism seminar. Why don't you read the Washington Post and New York Times book reviews out loud if you want to help out here?
Willing to find out who the electors are. Should we get rid of the system?
My own feeling is at the least. What we should really get rid of are all those other books cluttering up the shelves.
Got a quickie opinion on the O.J. trial?
Yeah, oh, right. There's something that hasn't gotten enough media attention. Come on, Larry, please, can't you just hold up the book for the rest of the show? I'm not proud of this, friends. In fact, it's downright shameful. But you, the American people, have a right to know. I'm Jeff Greenfield. And did I mention the secrets of rapid weight loss that appear on page 187?
Rapid weight loss? I'll buy it, Jeff. That's World News Sunday. Tomorrow on Good Morning America, the stresses on the O.J. Simpson jury. I'm Carol Simpson. Good night.
This has been a presentation of ABC News. More Americans get their news from ABC News than from any other source.
Sunday.
We're back. We're back.
Mel Gibson, Danny Glover, and Joe Pesci. Don't miss a